We are part of the American Library Association. As I said, we meet monthly, and today our monthly program on the third Wednesday will be a visit to the Dickens Project 2023 for a presentation on Charles Dickens and the law. So, I'm going to give you the Second Life URL. I'm going to ask everyone to stand up. And you can see the sign, Welcome to the Dickens Project 2023. And here we are at the main landing point for the Dickens Project 2023 with portals to different spaces, Christmas Past Island, the park and skating pond, and many others. We're standing on a map of this year's Dickens Project, and you will notice the red arrow right behind Dex, which points to the portal that leads us to our Community Virtual Library Research Center. Who's brave enough to step on the red arrow and walk through first? Step right up and walk straight through the arrow to the Research Center and Innsmouth House. Great, there goes Dex. Follow straight through and you'll take a right and I'll meet you in the Research Center. Turn right and let's head into the Research Center warehouse to the Community Virtual Library, or CVL, Research Center here at the Dickens Project 2023. Walk into the CVL Research Center warehouse and take a seat. And I'll pass you a note card with some readings that we're going to share to dig into a bit about Charles Dickens and his experience with the law. So welcome to Dickens and the Law. This presentation was prepared for the Community Virtual Library by Sue Moon Magic. She's our head reference librarian at the Community Virtual Library, which is a real library in a virtual world. So I'm going to begin with her introduction to this research, and then some of you can share the interesting information about the legal system in the Victorian era. I'm going to cam in on the poster, Dickens and the Law. In the days of Dickens, lawyers didn't have to endure as many years of school as today. No bar exam to pass. Many studied law in law offices under experienced mentors. Dickens was not formally trained as a lawyer, but he worked as a law clerk, a court reporter, and a reporter for Parliament. At 15, he was hired as an attorney's clerk, serving subpoenas, registering wills, copying transcripts. Later, he became a court reporter. For 3 years, he was surrounded by law students, law clerks, copying clerks, court clerks, magistrates, barristers, and solicitors. Dickens himself enrolled as a law student in 1839 at the age of 27. Welcome, stranger. I'll be passing out readings soon, so you'll all have an opportunity to read aloud if you choose to. And in 1846, Dickens inquired about work as a magistrate. His biographer, Claire Tomalin, hints that Charles Dickens, like David Copperfield, didn't pursue a legal education, in part because he could not afford the 100 pounds needed. If you're just arriving, take a seat. I'm introducing Charles Dickens and the law with some background on his legal experiences. Of his 10 children, only Henry was successful as a lawyer. Dickens did not think highly of most lawyers. One of his characters in Bleak House, Mr. Vholes, said, "Most lawyers infest dimly lighted, moldy offices like maggots in nuts." Thank you, Dex. I'm going to hand out the readings in just a moment. Courtrooms of the day had bad conditions. The ventilation was terrible, and the rooms were cramped, dirty, dark, and shady rooms that held most of the legal discussions. One historian tells of a court where, to improve the airflow, court officials pumped in air from the main sewer. The unclean robing rooms, and lack of resources forced lawyers to share the limited supply of towels, combs, and water. There was a general rudeness toward jury members, witnesses, and clients. These were not pleasant times to be involved with legal matters. You can see one on Dickens' attitude to the law. He was a lifelong critic of the iniquities of a social system that produced criminals and then punished them. And you can see he saw the seamy side of the law, the Fleet Prison, Newgate, and the Marshalsea. His doubtless slipped many a time into the Old Bailey and saw there tried many an artful dodger. One prominent arena that Dickens addressed was the law, and his legal characters and portraits have given his readers a valuable, albeit highly subjective and not altogether positive, reflection of the law in his time. And I'm going to see if Dex would like to be our first reader.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Some of the important details of the life of Charles Dickens are as familiar to many of us as the various qualities of mind and heart which we have come to associate with such memorable characters as David Copperfield and Philip Pym, otherwise known as Pip, or Esther Summerson and Little Dorrit. Oh yes. Bowles, Jaggers, and Stryver, three lawyers whose names suggest no strong authorial admiration. As a boy, Dickens knew poverty. His father was a clerk in England's Navy pay office. He was, as well, all too relaxed when it came to spending modest salary he earned.
Thank you, Dex. I love hearing the global voices and the various accents, as we're a very global community in Second Life. If you haven't met Dex, he's from Poland. Thank you for reading, Dex. That was lovely. And now we'll go to reader number 2. Shiloh, would you like to read?
All right. When Dickens was 12 years old in 1824, his father was sent to prison because he had accumulated debts and lacked the means of paying them. This prison, Marshalsea, figures prominently in Little Dorrit, even as it did in the life of the young Dickens, who spent time behind bars in accordance with prevailing customs. A debtor's family often accompanied him when he became locked up. As a child, Dickens also worked for extremely low wages in a shoe blacking factory. He pasted labels on bottles. In his spare time, he wandered the streets of London, a penniless lad curious to understand the teeming confusion of a great port city.
Thank you, Shiloh. Wonderful. And we will move on to our next reader. For reader number 3, let's have Clyte. Would you like to read next?
It was only the death of his paternal grandmother that enabled his father to be released from prison. She left a small legacy to her son. The lesson would never be forgotten by a novelist who was forever reminding his readers, through the workings of one or another plot, how arbitrary fate can be, and how good can come of bad, or of course, vice versa.
Thank you. That was lovely. Again, so nice to hear so many different voices. Let's see, who else would like to read? Stranger, I know you usually like to read. Would you like to read passage number 4?
At 15, Dickens was studying law. As an attorney's apprentice, he mastered shorthand. He read legal texts long and hard. He also, in a matter of months, became bored. He loved the English language, dreamed of using it in one way or another. In 1829, he became a court reporter for the Court of Chancery, whose majestic inscrutability would, decades later, dominate Bleak House.
Dex, would you like to read again and read passage number 5?
In the minds of those struggles, a moral visionary such as Charles Dickens is no small ally. He takes in his hands the abstract matters of subject matter, legal ethics, and gives them the complex, provocative life of a story. He gives us characters as fate shapes it. He gives us a chance and circumstance, good luck and bad luck, humor and melancholy, an opportunity not to figure out the world theoretically, but put oneself in it correctly.
Thank you, Dex. And let's move again to Shiloh. Would you be reader number 6?
Recently, I came across this observation made by Viktor Frankl, a physician who only barely survived years of Hitler's hell. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walk through the huts comforting others, giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Thank you, Shiloh. Let's see. Clyde, would you like to read again with passage number 7?
As one goes over those words again and again, surely it is not inappropriate to think of Charles Dickens and his enormous, hard-earned moral quarry, which he dug and dug, a lifetime's effort. He knew how constrained we all are, how hard it is for us to break free, to achieve a measure of continuing dignity. His exhortation of a particular profession, the law, was meant to honour its possible role in our lives, at its best a bulwark against anarchy and a pointer in the direction of fairness.
Let's see. Stranger, would you like to read once again the final passage number 8?
Still, there are awful lapses, as he knew, as we in this century have also come to know. The point, the often isolated and lonely good folk of the world of Charles Dickens seemed to reach out to join hands with those Dr. Frankl describes. Orphans, all amid the terrible human disasters of our history, yet also heroes whom each of us needs to remember with a certain tenacity, perhaps, as we go about our daily lives, our daily business, including that of the law.
Thank you, Stranger, and thank you to all our readers.